Alfred Russel Wallace (1823 to 1913) was a British naturalist, geographer, and contemporary of Charles Darwin. He was also discoverer of principle of natural selection and founder of modern evolutionary biogeography, or the geographical distribution of species. Wallace made towering scientific contributions, but he also had a unique interest in issues of social justice. Unlike Darwin, who was very focused on science, Wallace, while traveling, studying, and writing, advocated for causes like women's rights and the equitable redistribution of wealth. These were not uniformly popular, but Wallace stayed deeply committed to these. In the field of science, Wallace famously scooped Darwin, as he independently discovered natural selection in 1858. Wallace even sent his embryonic theory to Darwin. You might imagine some animosity between the two, but the opposite is actually true. Wallace was most magnanimous individual, almost generous to a fault, only interested in ideas and sharing this. His astonishing legacy also offers inspiration about him as a person, for he reshaped science, but remained a deeply humanitarian, generous, and kind being. Unlike Darwin, Wallace came from humble origins. Having to leave formal schooling at 14 and take up different jobs, he self-educated himself. Reading voraciously, he became interested in the big scientific and philosophical questions of the day. This included thinking about the nature of species. In his 20s, he planned to travel abroad with Henry Bates, a kindred spirit and naturalist interested in insect life. In 1848, they journeyed to South America, carrying out explorations over 4 years across Amazonia, the Rio Negro River, areas corresponding to modern-day Venezuela and Colombia, collecting a huge number of specimens. They suffered many privations, though, and Wallace even lost his younger brother during these difficult travels, but his enthusiasm to study nature never dimmed. On the way home, he also lost almost everything he did collected, from specimens to notes, when the ship carrying him was destroyed. But being extremely resilient, he decided to travel again, this time to a different part of the world. In 1858, Wallace went to Southeast Asia, visiting Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, Peninsular, Malaysia, etc. Over the next 8 years, there, apart from collecting and cataloging over 120,000 specimens, drawing breathtaking illustration and recording data, he also established his famous species notebook. He planned to write a book arguing for the idea of species change. This was considered heretical by many, but Wallace was convinced that transmutation in nature was the truth. He aimed to disprove Charles Lyell, a well-known geologist, who argued elaborately against the possibility of species change. Wallace rebutted each of Lyell's arguments one after another. Some years later, Wallace discovered the principle of natural selection, or how species which survived environmental change could reproduce more successfully and pass their advantages on to their descendants, even yielding new species over time. In 1858, he shared his knowledge with Charles Darwin, who had been working on this notion for years and was writing his own thesis. Quite remarkably, Wallace was happy to defer to Darwin. He did not publish his own book while Darwin went ahead. Wallace also founded the field of biogeography, or the distribution of species on Earth. He was convinced that plants, animals, and other beings were not randomly placed on our planet. He was intrigued by why certain groups were found only in some parts and not elsewhere, as well as the linkages, both geographical and geological, or over time, between such species found in particular locations. Marsupials, for instance, are found mostly in the Australian realms, but some are also found in South America. How that distribution came to be a serious question. Biogeography studies such phenomena trying to understand all the historical and ecological processes which underpin this. Importantly, Wallace did not just describe species as he saw them, he discerned that to analyze their geographical presence accurately, he needed to study Earth history. At this time, the fact of the continental drift had not been discovered. It was not known that continents could shift, yet Wallace looked at how corridors across Earth might have opened, letting species move between continents. Part of his work also involved discovering a multiplicity of beings, especially insects and birds. Now, for us to thanks for such intensive documentation, we now have richly detailed information about Earth's species diversity and regional distributions. In light of the tremendous challenges we face now, with habitat fragmentation, climate change, and other factors leading to the biodiversity crisis, such work can help us better understand what we are losing. Wallace himself recognized this. In his writing, he lamented over how it was almost criminal to allow these records of the natural world, where every organism has a uniquely interesting evolutionary history, to simply go extinct, often unrecorded and unknown. Many people think he would be quite saddened to see this accelerated species loss over the 20th century, moving into current times as well. His own era was extraordinary. The 19th century yielded several negative effects for the world, including relentless resource exploitation, colonialism, and the subjugation of many cultures. Perhaps one of its few positive features was its ability to help engender a sense of wonder at Earth's immensity, our planet's fascinating diversity, and its sheer beauty. The era offered the opportunity to travel across the world, allowing people with an inquisitive turn of mind to observe different regions and think about how life was organized. For Wallace, Darwin, and many others of these times, travel provided an invaluable way to see, note, and write profound insights which both asked and answered one of the most enduring questions of life: why?